What up, Pod Squad? Coming back to you again for another edition of Mondays with Mehoff. Shouting out the coming up Monday night football preview game of the week, as well as a few just options we're looking at before the Sunday games kick off with some stashes, some players I love over consensus or over just other more clear, obvious options. So, starting off this week, we are currently 7-1 on the season for Monday night games, so we're doing pretty well. We had one trip up back with the Rams over the 49ers early on, but last week we continued the success with picking the upset of the Bears over the Patriots. So 7-1 through 7 weeks with that doubleheader to start the year. We're feeling pretty good. This week we're looking at the game of the Bengals traveling over to the Browns. So Bengals are 4-3, I believe, and the Browns are going to be 2-5. Browns are at home, but the Bengals are favored by 3. So it could be interesting here. The big news in this game recently this week coming out that Jamar Chase is going to be out for several weeks. He was not placed on IR, so it's hopeful that he'll be back quicker than 4 weeks, but waiting to see there. So big thing for me, obviously you're starting T. Higgins in your lineup if you have him anyway, but I think this injury news makes T. Higgins a locked-in top 10 wide receiver for the rest of the time at least that Jamar Chase is out. I think Higgins is already a wide receiver one. He's just got Jamar on his team, so I think this will allow us to kind of see what Higgins can do again and really just get the volume and the workload. So continuing on with the Bengals, we've got Joe Burrow, who's had back-to-back QB1 weeks. I think that will continue, so I wouldn't be afraid of starting him, even with Jamar out. I think he's good enough, and I think this offense is looking good enough to continue to move the ball around. They would probably rely on Mixon a bit more, but I don't expect them to run like crazy against this Cleveland defense. I think Mixon will be more utilized in the dump-offs and the screen game, so look for him more in a PPR league to feel pretty good about, but you're obviously locking him in no matter what. And then I kind of like Hayden Hurst as a sneaky top 10 tight end this week, just volume-wise. I think he's going to start getting some more looks, and he's already done really well efficiently with the looks he has had. And then Tyler Boyd stepping up as the second option. I think he's a safe wide receiver 3 going forward. He's kind of a boomer bust where if he gets that deep look, makes or breaks your week, but I think he's good enough now with Jamar out to get some extra looks and feel locked in for your wide receiver 3 or flex if you have him. Moving over to the Cleveland side of the ball, it's pretty much only 2 guys that I'm really interested in. Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper. I think Nick Chubb is an elite top-end running back one. You're starting him, obviously, no matter what. The Cincinnati defense has been good this year against the run, but they haven't played anybody like Chubb, so I think he could dictate how this game ends up going. And then Amari Cooper, he's kind of on the border of like a high wide receiver 2. I would lean more for him being like a low wide receiver 1 this week than a high wide receiver 2. I just think the Browns are going to have to throw decently. They're going to want to control the game with Chubb, but they're going to have to throw to keep up with the Bengals. And Cooper's been getting a lot of targets with Jacoby as the quarterback. It's just not turned into stuff every single week. So I think a low wide receiver 1 finish is definitely in the cards. Maybe 10 plus targets with 70 to 80 yards, and you're hoping for a touchdown. So something in there, and that's pretty much it. So looking at this game overall, I know I mentioned Cleveland is underdogs by 3 points. I would still pick the Bengals here traveling. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the Bengals are the better team right now. They're starting to surge at the right time. And if you're betting, if you're following Tyler's stuff, I would 100% still just take the 3 point. I don't think I'm worried about the Bengals only winning by a point or 2. I think the game will feel close throughout because it'll be controlled on the ground, especially by the Browns, but I would imagine the Bengals end up on top, by 7 to 10 points. So I would feel pretty good there that Cincinnati keeps rolling. And that's pretty much it for Monday night. So hoping that we get to the 8 wins in the column at 8-1. That'd be pretty impressive on the year. It's been a lot of teams that have seemed like it's been easy picks, but again, this whole season's been weird for upsets and underdogs. So you never know, but we're hoping for the 8-1 record after this week is over. As far as some other guys that I'm looking at, moving into Sunday morning, a couple of guys I would look at stashing. I would pick up Van Jefferson ASAP if he's on your waiver wire. He was on my main league and I just did it. So him returning back for the Rams, they've just looked out of sorts with everybody except Cooper Kupp. Allen Robinson hasn't been what we thought, and I think having Van Jefferson come back, a young, dynamic receiver who knows this offense, who Stafford trusts, I think he could kind of maybe slide into that wide receiver 2 role and get some looks to maybe give Cooper Kupp a break. So I would grab him ASAP if he's out there. Kadarius Toney news is interesting with the trade with the Chiefs, so I'd pick him up, though you're not going to start him for a couple weeks until you see if he's healthy or what they can do there. And as far as some guys that I really, really love this week at the quarterback position, Tua versus Detroit, I think is going to be amazing. I think they're not going to really be able to stop much, as they haven't all season. And Tua with his weapons there, I think could have a pretty solid day. And then my swimming upstream pick I mentioned on the podcast, but Daniel Jones on the Walden this week versus Seattle. So fire either of those guys up unless you have a top end option. I think they're both better than anyone beyond the top 5 quarterbacks or so. If you're going real deep sleepers and you're struggling, I know I slid him into my DFS lineup this week, but Sam Ehlinger for the Colts making his rookie debut, I think it could be very interesting. He did run a lot in college. He's got some weapons that have stepped up recently, even with Matt Ryan, and I don't think it's the Ryan to Ehlinger step down is that big. So it could be a very cheap, interesting target for a quarterback this week. Running backs, we just got the news a little bit ago, earlier in the weekend, that Zeke is going to be out this week. So I would also fire up Tony Pollard as a high wide receiver, or high running back too, at least just with his receiving workload. If you got him on your bench, make sure you slide him in ASAP this morning because he's going to be big today. Deonta Foreman, who did great last week, obviously splitting time with Chuba Hubbard. Or with Chuba being out now, I really like Deonta Foreman versus Atlanta this week. I think that could be very interesting. And then Travis Etienne, obviously, with the news that James Robinson has been moved, I think everybody who has him is starting him and hoping for the breakout, but I will go one step above that and say that I think Etienne's going to be a locked-in running back 1 the rest of the way. I think he could be a top 10 guy, and I think by this time next year when we're looking at draft season, Etienne could be one of those guys that people are talking about potentially taking in the first round or like a high second. So he's going to be that guy that makes the jump, has a great chance the rest of the season to show out. So I think I wouldn't trade him for pretty much anything, since I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking in your leagues if you have him, and I would lock him in no matter what. I think it's going to be really cool to watch. Lastly, running it out with just the receiving options, I really like Chris Olave this week. I talked about it on the pod as a DFS option, but I think he's going to look great even with Andy Dalton throwing the ball. I'm also big on DJ Moore. I think last week was a taste of him finally starting to break out a little bit and getting CMC out of the way. Yeah, the Panthers aren't going to necessarily look great in the run every week, but I think DJ Moore has a chance to step up a little bit more and start actually doing some stuff. So I think I'd start feeling good about throwing him in your lineup as a wide receiver 2 or a flex. And then Irv Smith, I'm really high on for tight ends this week, not just because I'm a Vikings homer here, but I think the Cardinals have always been very bad against the tight end, and I think Cousins is going to be able to look over the middle and get him in space to kind of get a couple of plays. So don't be surprised if he gets a touchdown today or at least 60 yards. I'm thinking, anytime you can get 6+ points from a tight end, you're happy, and I think there's upside for more with him this week. So those are a few of my big target guys. We'll continue to talk more about all of our predictions and previews on the pod, but yeah, make sure that you get your lineup set. Make sure you're paying attention to who's in and who's out shortly in this next half hour here. And good luck with your weeks in week 8. We'll talk to you soon, Pod Squad. Thanks for watching.